The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hi, everybody, and well, only the brave are here, I guess. This is an hour that is not too great for Europe. I think it's pretty good and doable for Australia and New Zealand and the United States. If only people didn't have to work for a living, I'm sure we would be have a lot of a lot of folks with us. What I was just explaining or talking about with Joe is that there's two things going. You know, it's there's always two things going. It's an apparent duality and a real oneness. And in this duality, we have the world of relativity, which is actual but not real, and we have the world of being, which in which the idea of reality begins. So, you know, tomorrow night, at this time, and maybe Joe can put the link into the chat box. We'll be doing some work on cosmic fire. Now, you know, that's a big book, and I taught that book from the year 2005 until, I don't know, we got through most of it. It was at least 5 years, and it's not doable in 5 years, really, and we have only 5.5 years remaining in the era of the Forerunner. But I thought if we begin together, and I can sustain the webinaring on Wednesday nights. Of course, I got 3 big webinars on Wednesday, so we'll have to see whether Wednesday will really work. But you know, at this hour, which is 11 p.m. for me, but maybe better for some others, then we have a chance of really working with the world of relativity. We've had some wonderful comments about relativity and about the relation of all things. You know, Nancy Connolly wrote, I think, a very good offering just recently. But I began to think, you know, look, relativity is one thing, and extremely important because that's what the Tibetan teaches. However, reality, infinity, supra-universal reality, even though it's still a kind of illusion except for the absolute, is a different ballgame. And there, all of the details which arise from what I would call a limited capacity of any emanation to perceive. A limited capacity. We're all emanations, you know. Let's just call ourselves for the moment emanations of the one universal logos. We have come down so far in our scope, okay? We've come down so far in our scope that our capacity for perception is limited. We cannot yet, until we disabuse ourselves of all the veils we have put on, we cannot, you know, perceive the whole. And even the whole of the universe, I will attempt to prove, or at least suggest, that the whole of the universe is simply an infinitesimal, you know, which is the opposite of absolute infinity. So you think you've got the whole thing here, but you've just got the universe is next to nothing. So I figured when talking about such things as this, which have a strong philosophical and I would say kind of a third ray flavor to them, it's not quite fair to deal with the world of relativity at the same time, except to say it doesn't count in this subject. Meaning that if you perceive, if there's any division whatsoever, we're not really talking about that. We're talking about, in a way, the essentially non-divisible. And so I thought, well, better go to Master DK's language and redo the class or the work on a treatise on cosmic fire whenever I can. You know, I can't do it every week, but I'll try as much as possible to redo cosmic fire in a way that we can all benefit from this wonderful book on universal relativity, and especially on relativity within our local cosmos system. You know, there's got to be division. Think about this. There's got to be division if there's going to be relations. And relations and relativity are, you know, peas in the same pod. They are, you know, basically we're talking about the same subject. Only parts can relate, and parts only exist when there's division. Now, in the absoluteness, there is no real division, and hence there can be no relativity. So relativity, in the studies of Master DK, it absolutely deserves its own approach. And when I say that cosmic fire will be the basis of this approach, I don't mean that the other books will not be hauled in for amplificatory elaboration, you know, because in a way he set out in Cosmic Fire, a treatise on cosmic fire, a lot of subjects, and then he wrote books on those subjects, and he amplified those subjects. Okay, so we'll also take advantage of the amplifications. And this too, this approach too, should be a help in cultivating the higher mind. It's certainly not as abstract as identify as being, which is also meant to be an experiential kind of outpouring or course. There's just so many things, however, in Cosmic Fire that we can talk about a mental understanding, but we cannot talk about experience. Even the Tibetan admits, well, what's going on the cosmic astral plane? I don't know. I've not been there. But he offers, because he is such a student, what the great teaching in Shambhala has said about the cosmic astral plane, and we can realize that it has got to be accurate, and also the cosmic mental plane and so forth. Those are beyond our experience. But in the identify as being work that we're doing, we hope that what we're talking about, some of it will be beyond experience, but others of it, it really must be experienced, and, you know, I use another word for it, inperienced or inperienced. And that is my hope, that these other states of consciousness, which are beyond even the well-cultivated mind, will become real to us. I remember in the arcane school once, you know, in that wonderful kind of curriculum they've got, Alice Bailey said, well, okay, you've studied a lot now, you know a lot, now let's make sure that it's real to you, you know, that you can really experience something. And I feel that way when we deal with the two curricula that we are working with. The curriculum of being, which is, you know, as abstract as you can get, and the curriculum of relativity, which is a huge exercise for the concrete and the abstract mind, and will lead also into pure reason of Buddhi, where the correct relations between all things are envisioned in a flash of intuition. So we have a lot, you know, cut out for us. It's just wonderful material, and you can ask, well, what's it all about and why bother? But I think it will come home to us why we are bothering. Okay, well, I just want to welcome some of you here. I want to welcome everybody that is here, of course, and hope that others will be able to join us along the way. So hi to Anna and Annette and Antonella and Antoinette and Catherine and Francois and Frederick and Hideka. I hope that's correct. Hideka Ota and Johi Lee from South Korea, and Leah and Lori and Lorraine and Yenka, Risto, Sam, Stephen, and Tia. Welcome to all of you, and maybe others will join us. And over here on the help side, Joe and Michael Stacy are helping me stay on the map, because you can get lost in some of the technicalities. Well, look, I've got a little meditation for us before we start. And then I'm going to ask you if you have particular questions. We won't spend a lot of time on them. And then I'm going to get into the issue that was taken up in one of my letters to you about what is the idea of identicality. When we talk about the identical, what do we really mean? When we talk about essence, what do we really mean? And maybe we can experience those things. I tell you, in my experience anyway, or inperience, these are very subtle matters. And, you can try to beat it and flog it and say, oh, okay, get in line and do it. But you cannot be assured. It suddenly appears and then disappears. Okay, in the old teaching, they call this the blinking of the dragon's eye. The blinking of the dragon's eye. And what this means is that a type of perception which is much higher than our ordinary perception instantaneously comes into consciousness and then leaves. Now, what we're looking for is the dragon of wisdom with his eye wide open all the time, if we could stand it. So, we may experience this blinking of the dragon's eye where a kind of a super reality, at least super for us, comes into cognizance. However, it doesn't stay because our form can't stand it. Now, what we have to do is build up our form. He talks about this in his treatise on white magic, that, when this fading in and out, and you're with God and then you're not with God and all that, the mystical experience, it's because the form retreats from the presence of this higher type of perception, which I call infuception. So we have to school our form so that it can stand the pressure of higher states of consciousness, of which we may have no true idea except to name them until they occur. See, this name, that name, and it's this and it's that, and then the experience, the imperience, is a shock. I mean, it's completely different than we may have thought. It's very subtle, very, very subtle. The most subtle. Well, I don't think we can reach the most subtle thing ever. There are degrees of subtlety, but we can reach something which for us is extremely subtle compared to the normal stage of even good intellectual experience. I mean, we're all of us expected to have a mind here, and Master DK, who's such a brilliant teacher, he certainly cultivates our mind for us if we'll just cooperate with him, and our abstract mind. But when he talks about buddhi, how often do we really know what that is? When he talks about spiritual will from the atmic plane, how often do we know what that is? When he talks about monadic awareness, this is what he calls, it's, for many of us, it's just a word. And it goes on and on and on, intensifying until we reach that incredible stage of self-awareness that is possessed by the universal logos. Let's just call it the God of this particular universe, of which there have ever been infinitudinous instantiations. An instance. How many instances have there been of a universe? Infinite. You cannot count them, numberless, because they had no beginning, and that's very hard to conceive, and they will have no end. Cyclically, they will appear and disappear, just like the great breath, breathing in, breathing out. So these are thoughts that take us far away from our ordinary concrete cares and worries and concerns, and they are underlying everything. So what I'd like to do here, just have a little meditation. Actually, I wrote this one out, so why not? And I have some things I'd like to get into with you tonight, if I can. So this is, we're in the third series of these identify as being kind of a curriculum, and this is program 6. This is the webinar pertaining to the third series. They've been irregular so far, sometimes every week, sometimes we skip 3 weeks or whatever, I just do what I can, and searching for regularity, if I can possibly do it, I will do it. So, in the beginning, let us simply be still, and be silent for a few moments. And in that silence, wherever we may be in the world, and it's mostly Europe and Australia, maybe a little New Zealand, west coast of America, maybe a little, but everyone else is asleep, I guess. Wherever we may be, we find the stirring within us that relates us together in some kind of energy which maybe is more experienced in meditation than every moment. And, in this kind of work, we use our creative imagination quite a bit, because one day imagination can become something more than that. It can become the thing imagined. So we know we have this equipment here. We have a temporary aggregation we call a body, physical body, and also a temporary aggregation we call the etheric body, and we as it were, take our attention away from those two. And we have that aggregation of astral atoms, which has been built through the permanent astral atom. And through it we are attracted and repelled. We desire one way or another. But we take our attention away from it. That's called pratyahara. That's called abstraction. and that aggregation called the mental body, especially the lower mental body, through which we think and reason and so forth. We take our attention away, always moving inward. And now we kind of imaginatively just dismiss those 3 or 4 rings pass not. We know they exist, but for the time being we pretend they don't exist. They're not a focus for us. They just kind of imaginatively disappear, and we find ourselves then in this body of radiance. We use our imagination. And we call this the egoic lotus, or the soul body, or the causal body. And it is radiant with quality and with sound, either harmonious or not, and is the distillation of all of our experiences. And we feel very, close to each other and to all human beings through soul knowledge, soul love, soul sacrifice. We feel we would be connected. DK said we don't meditate properly because we cannot focus within the causal body, so we have to learn how to do it. Now you have quite a different identity here because you just don't have a personality according to our imaginings. But I'm going to ask you to just dismiss and take your attention away from this causal body and all its color and quality and all that. Just imaginatively let it disappear. It's no longer a factor of interest or involvement for you right now. And the next ring pass not, because you just can't, even the universe is a ring pass not. You can't get rid of rings pass not until the universe is periodically gone. And so somehow we're in this triple world of the triad, which is, in one way, the mind, the heart, and the will of our planetary logos. And it's like it's much of an enlargement. We can be anywhere really on the planet or in the various globes, and even in the various chains. The high masters can do that. We can just imagine. And we know a little bit about how our planetary God thinks and what is his plan, and a little bit about how he loves and how he brings all things together in harmony, because the Buddhic plane is the plane of harmony. maybe we know a little bit about the spiritual will, which the Christ began to approach there in the Garden of Gethsemane. But these are essentially vehicles with rings pass not. It's organization of the matter of the highest mental subplane, of the Buddhic plane, and of the Atmic plane. It's a ring pass not, and we don't like ring pass knots in this kind of meditation, so allow that ring pass knot also to be of no concern to you and let it disappear. And what remains? What remains is you, the real you, the essential, within this monadic vehicle on the second subplane of the cosmic physical plane. You've entered really now the realm of being. Yes, it will intensify as we ascend, but somehow in this monadic awareness, you're much more aware of the factor of being, and the isness of things makes itself present to you. Of course, you're also aware of quality, but we're not talking about quality now. We'll talk about that tomorrow night. And we are within this monadic vehicle, as if a 6th degree initiate. And it's a long time before that occurs to students such as we are. But, okay, the imagination. And we start really to express essential energy here, according to one of the 7 rays, as there are not just 3 but 7 monadic types on the monadic plane. And that's, the primary ray, or sub-primary, let's call it. We'll get into a deeper feeling about that, but that's a temple too, and all temples have to be destroyed. The universe itself is a temple, and it has to be destroyed or returned. And the temple of Ezekiel, that's what it's called, will be destroyed, and that ring pass knot, as subtle as it is, will not limit us in the same way it did on the monadic plane. So although it's way, way beyond, let's just imagine the disappearance of the ring pass knot of the temple of Ezekiel on the monadic plane. And we are essential fire, We belong in the sea of fire, and alchemically, we are the flying essence, the volatile essence. And we fly vibratorily into the sea of fire on the logoic plane. That's where we go. And you think you're finished with all rings pass not, right? But it isn't so. because there's the Father, the Son, and the Holy Ghost. Huge entities of a cosmic nature, aspects of the planetary logos, and even of the solar logos. And there's still a ring past not. You're in the sea of fire now. Is it reachable? Not by us, but the Christ is reaching it. He is, in symbolic language, sitting at the right hand of the Father. Well, the Father, Sanat Kumara, that's his home, the sea of fire, and other homes in the four doors to Shambhala, but that's the highest home on the cosmic physical plane. So who are you and what are you? You know, you're a unit of life, a unit of fire. And are you different from all other units of fire? No. They all coalesce as we rise. They all coalesce. Well, it's this volatile essence that makes the big trip on the way of higher evolution to Sirius, to the ray path, to the cosmic astral plane, on the second path, or to become a planetary logos, or to become even a solar logos, or to become a great karmic lord. It's this volatile essence of the monad that makes the trip. It's way beyond us, okay, but we just, in our mind, it's a step towards unity. And this one diagram about Parabrahm gives the idea of that rising. So our attention will be given to following the ageless wisdom and the path that it lays out for us until we can be like the Christ and the Buddha at the very top of the cosmic physical plane. Is that the end? No. It's just the beginning. And all those ring past knots will, or rings past knot will disappear, 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 just the way they appeared when we became an emanation. We are the universal logos in emanation, and will be restored through the disappearance of our rings past not to our original identity at the very top. You can't use a word like that, but let's just say at the very highest level of our particular universe. I think let's just say that this little trip in imagination may be enough for right now. I'll keep this meditation and I'll get to the point which I want to get to, which is basically we are seeking to understand something beyond quality. When we read all the Tibetan books and Cosmic Fire, and we talk in normal terms about the ageless wisdom, we are talking in the realm of quality, the difference between this and that, the higher, the lower, the left, the right, all the relations, unsuspected, suspected, our rays, our astrology, all that, the realm of quality. But in this particular curriculum, if we're up to it and dare to get into it, while never relinquishing the study of quality, then we're going to understand something about isness. So you can perceive the good, the bad. Just take a look inside your imagination. Look at something very good. Now look at something in your judgment very bad. The good and bad are instances of quality and of distinctive principled energies. But they both have isness. They are. They both are because they are perceived and even self-perceived, really, because they are within us, within the universal logos. So to be is to be perceived, an old philosophical dictum, and to be in universe is to be self-perceived by the universal logos. So we may be horrified by the bad and uplifted and immensely attracted by the good, but that's not the point. That is an important point, and of course, you know, in the universe we deal with it all the time, but there is just the isness of things, the raw fact of their registration. And then in that isness, all things are absolutely equal. In that isness, all perception things perception, are absolutely equal. Equal in isness. And we're, of course, beginning to verge upon reality above and beyond the universe when we talk like that. Now, this is a real mind bender. That's very different from the way we usually deal with our life. But I'm going to ask you some questions about that, and we'll see if it does have some value. So let's just see what we've done. We've risen, imaginatively getting rid of rings past naught, finding we can't really, even on the sea of fire, be rid of that ring past naught, called the Father and the Son and the Holy Ghost. And we're looking for what we share in identicality with every other universal logoic self-perception, meaning a thing, a being, something in cosmos, a universal logoic self-perception. That's what we are, and that's what everything is. Let's sound the Om just to confirm this little adventure in imagination. Okay, friends, thank you. I'll have, there's a lot more to this meditation. And I've made up meditations there in the Infinitization of Selfhood book and a lot more. So this work that we're going to do together will have a strong meditative component intended to shake us out of our habitual perceptions and give them an entirely new meaning in the realm of infuception. And I'll try to keep these neologisms to a minimum. I certainly have, a few of them meant to give different angles of sight on our usual perceptions. And that's the way I choose to operate. And hopefully it doesn't become too much of a burden for you. Pretty soon a word like infuception will mean something specific to you as something very subtle. Dawns, and then disappears and dawns again, and then disappears. Maybe we have to give that dragon a good dose of no-dose, such as kept students awake for college exam nights. Got to keep his eyes open. Okay, now, do you have any questions or any thoughts about this meditation in which we find that we're getting rid of limitation all the time? I think I'm a human being. Okay, I am, but I'm not. I think I'm a soul. I am, but I'm not. I think I'm the personality of the monad that we call the spiritual triad, Here it is. There it is. I am, but I'm not. I think about the monad, which is our great objective in a way. I am that monad, but I'm not. And beyond, I'm the essence of the monad up here in the sea of fire. And, immortal and without beginning, without end. It's just a different way of thinking about ourselves, and so many of our problems come from the fact that we have been thinking about ourselves wrongly. And we have a big mistaken identity about what we think we are. Yes, we have to live in this world of limitation and relativity cyclically forever. Yes, we have to. At the same time, we need to be reminded of who we really are and what we really are, and we'll talk about that if it does anybody any good. I labor under the perhaps illusion that it's doing me some good, little relative me, and I hope it's the same thing for you. Okay, are there any thoughts or comments you would like to make? And Bruno, here we got something. Okay, so we have a couple of things. We have Lorraine is here. Hi, the link. Okay, well, that I hope is okay. I hope that that's being solved with Joe. The fifth ray, especially as applied to mechanics and electronics. Okay, Bruno, the meditation we did, I did this alone before some weeks ago by myself. Okay, already was in this group of study, and for me it was a confirmation. I did see the sea of fire, electric fire, that was coming from the river of fire and ended in the sea of fire. And look, even the image, even if it's in resonance with the real thing, and Christ himself is just now, and the Buddha polarizing at the highest level of Shambhala. So they're involved with the real thing. But in our imagination, we can have resonant images, resonant with those realities in which we will polarize ourselves when we are 6th and 7th degree initiates, some thousands of years ahead. So that works, and that is helpful. We do have to always discriminate between the image and the actuality, the reality. I don't think, we can't sort of walk in the doors of Shambhala unless we're a 5th degree initiate on the first ray or a 6th degree initiate on other rays. But we can formulate conceptions which are resonant with those higher states and which give us then some feeling of the energy that we will contact in fullness later. So thanks for your thought on that, Bruno. Other questions that you may have, either you can speak verbally or you can write, whatever. Other comments? Look, when people think about this course, they say, oh, this is a tough course. But in a way, it's very simple. It all starts the way the great Vedanta said, thou art that. Thou art that. He said 10,000 books can be written, and they're all on the theme, thou art that. And as that begins to be more than words, we're going to find our identity expanding, our depression leaving us, our habit of misery, our habit of misery, as DK accuses humanity of having. We've got to overcome that habit of misery, and the joy of the Aquarian age to be one way of doing that. Don't forget we live on this planet which is called the planet of purifying pain and releasing sorrow. So if you're a graduate, you've been through that curriculum, and otherwise you're going through it. But it kind of helps to know that in back of it all, you are the one immortal, can't give it a name really, namelessness, even that's naming it. That's what you are, that's what I am, that's what everything is. And maybe that will be useful to us as we struggle in our limitation. Okay, your thoughts, anybody? And then we'll get into some questions and things to ponder. Obviously, I have much too much to ponder here for what's possible in any one setting. Tuya and I do travel. We travel, up to the Little Bear Meditation Center. We got a bunch of little bears sitting out in front of the kind of house there, and lots of little bears. And we're right under the Great Bear. You just look about vertically up there in those latitudes that are so far north of the Arctic Circle. So, we're going to have this new group of world servers meeting from the 21st to the 28th. It's the festival week of the new group of world servers, and I know a lot of people are going to have these get-togethers to do what we can to strengthen the hands of the new group of world servers. And whatever we have, we will broadcast it at the same time. And some people who want to pick it up can do that. And other people who want to show up in person are certainly, we're very happy to have you. We'll be conducting some study classes, meditations, and rituals in our Temple of Silence here, and then maybe go up to the far north, sometime a little bit after the winter solstice. So every 7 years we have this opportunity to celebrate this wonderful subjective group, which helps to bring the representatives of the different ashrams together in constructive work right here on the lower 18 subplanes. That's where the work lies, and far above we get the energy to do the work properly. Okay, anybody here that would like to say anything about the meditation or anything related? You're most welcome. Otherwise, I get into some other things. Okay. You know, in a way, it's kind of funny because we're dealing with a subject for which words are inadequate. But I often talk about trigger words. Now, they may be very individual to you, or maybe they're going to work for everybody. But these are certain words that suddenly catapult us into states of awareness that have not been ours in the usual sense of the term. We've been in a lower state of apprehension, and then suddenly a trigger word comes along, boom, and suddenly the dragon's eye blinks, and you see something that you didn't see before. And that's important because, what does Master Moria say? Well, okay, when you're depressed about things or feeling down about them or at the trough there, you're not thinking very cosmically. You're just thinking about your poor little self. It's the great glamour of what will one day be second-rate humanity, the glamour of self-pity. But it is possible, and then in that state, you become irritated by so much of what life presents. And they call that irritation imperiled. It means to be in danger. Master Moria calls it imperil, and he says it's actually substantial. And, it's like real, like physical, and it precipitates itself on the walls of the nerves even, so that this kind of substance of irritation precipitates itself and makes for more chaotic consciousness and more friction and all that. But then what does he say? He says, wear away irritation, wear away imperil through cosmic perception. It might be in this little book of daring that's in the beginning of the Agni Yoga book. The first few pages, maybe page 10 or 11, right in there, 9, 10, 11. Little book within a book called the Book of Daring. And somewhere he says, wear away irritation. Attenuate. You rub it until there's hardly anything left. Wear it away through cosmic perception. Well, cosmic perception will one day be ours because we are that being. It sounds inflated to say so, but it's not. It's just logical. We are on a long pilgrimage here. And we pretty well reached the bottom of this particular descent and are rising again towards our original state. And one day as we have forever, we will return to that state and, realize we are the one universal being, even if it's just an infinitesimal, a next to nothing compared to absolute infinity. So we're on our way, and dropping away one ring past knot over another, and our perception is getting more and more cosmic, more and more expanded. And pretty soon, Master DK kind of joked. He said it's a good thing the masters have, considering the students they have to work with, it's a good thing the masters have overcome irritation. Because, an irritated master thinking thoughts in your direction could have quite a devastating effect. Master Mori, he also is very practical, and he said in the old days, a lot of power struggles, so you invited your enemy over to your castle or place where you live, and you fed him the liver of an irritated rooster, and he died. See, irritation is a poison. You know, as someone who's been so Martian my whole life, I've got to say, hey, that goes right back to me, you know. Irritation is a poison. But maybe we can all find the way that irritation compromises our perception of oneness. Okay, so then I'm going to assume now that there's no one that particularly wants to speak on any subject at this moment. So I'm going to go over here. I've sent out, a few letters, and I realize that sometimes it helps to, it helps to go over them together. By the way, this particular kind of page, I'll be sending out a lot of these, and basically it's one big document that's just growing and growing and growing, and I get more into the details here. I get more into the details. But, it's just too much to take up. I'm going to fill in commentary on this and all that, and that'll be the substance of this ebook, which is slowly emerging if I manage to stay on this planet long enough, So anyway, here's some questions. Or maybe this letter is even more important. But I've said something about it, and I'm just going to say a little bit more. There are a few points to remember, and if you have any response to these points, then just raise your hand or write something or whatever. We just have to dare to get into it. Look, nobody knows when they're at our stage of evolution, but we have the right instincts, spiritual instincts. Or even, DK says, the third initiation is prepared on the ground of intuitive instinct. It's beyond just the normal mentation, this goes here, that goes there, this is, all that. That's good, very good, needed, but to feel it in the heart where the center of life is found, and the monad is anchored in the heart, and in the heart of the head and all that, that's another ball game. That's another thing. That's just another step in helping to make manas into buddhi, mind into intuition. And then we can begin working with the transcendental mind. So I have said all perceptions are essentially identical. Notice the word essentially. That's really important, because obviously all perceptions have great formal differences. If I'm looking at a person or a cup of tea, formally very different, essentially identical. And can we find that identicality? Let's just start with people. Can you look at somebody and just get so still and open your heart and realize somehow, beyond formal differences, beyond levels of evolution, beyond any kind of qualitative difference, that you are that other person. You are the same. Now, sometimes sameness is very threatening, There's a stage of evolution where people, I'm me, I'm I, I'm different, that big personality stage that occurs before the crash of the tower in the fifth petal of the egoic lotus. You just become, super someone, only to discover that you better get humble fast, and life takes care of that. Then by the time you leave that fifth petal, you're already an aspirant, and you've taken the first initiation, and you're entering the hall of wisdom sadder but wiser, or maybe happy now that you're entering, but you've been through some grief That first initiation is not easy to take. And some people say, oh, yeah, I passed the first initiation, blah, 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 blah. Well, maybe. There was one person, very third ray, very sixth ray, very financially generous, financing the Tibetans' books and all that. But even though DK was protecting him as a kind of accepted disciple, he had not passed the first initiation, even though he was in that group, all the other members of which had passed the first initiation. So maybe we're working on it right now, or maybe it's just behind us, or maybe it's far behind us. Doesn't make any difference, really. There are appropriate things to do at every stage of evolution, and you have to find out what's appropriate for you. So another thing I just want to say here, all perceptions are of the same. Now this is a mind bender, okay? All perceptions, which are really things or beings or, isolated units in your mind, in your consciousness, all perceptions are of the same identical magnitude or size. Now, right away, he said, look, I see what's big and I see what's little. So how can you tell me that? But everything has to be shrunken down in comparison with absolute infinitude. Absolute infinitude, one of my definitions is the absolute deity looking at itself and all its parts and pieces. Not too elegant, but, there's two ways that the universe can disappear. The absolute deity can look at itself as a wholeness, which is like the absolute itself, or it can look at all the parts and pieces within itself. And those parts and pieces, well, that's absolute infinitude. And it has many mysteries, and we can go into that as well. I've written stuff on it, and if you have the patience, you can, deal with it, and sometime we'll deal with it again. But I want to be very careful, not only to deal with that which is super abstract, and everybody says, well, what can I do about that? And it's beyond me, I can't know anything. And the kind of thing, on the other hand, that can change your experience of yourself. That's what I'm interested in doing. Changing your experience of what you really are. The whole thing is about identity. And what you really are is what everybody else really is. The isness. Now, it may seem a long way off and very abstract, but it can dawn. So look, all perceptions, that means all things, are of the same identical size once you compare them to absolute infinitude and its scope. All things are ultimately, even the universe is an absolute infinitesimal, and here's the way I've marked it. The A is for absolute, and there's the infinity sign, and there's a line through it which says it's the infinitesimal. And finally, all the things that we think are real and measurable in some way just disappear altogether. They have no size at all because they are, as it were, reabsorbed into absoluteness, of which there's only one and there's no size, okay? So those are some of the mathematical things. You say, oh my God, that's higher math. Not really. It's just sort of a spiritual, psychological math to say that you're everything and you're nothing, or at least you're the no thing. Remember, my goal here is to see identity change and that those people who participate in this kind of inquiry will feel their identity changing. That doesn't mean they're going to be impractical mystics and can't handle their checkbook and can't handle shoveling the sidewalk or whatever, raking the leaves or whatever. No, they can do those things, but they know that underneath it all, they are the ground of all being. There is the ground of all being. The theologian Paul Tillich, he emphasized that aspect. And it's one thing to say, yeah, there's the ground of all being, and another thing to say, I am it. Now, it sounds like the wildest kind of inflation, but it really isn't. And I call it super solipsism. Solipsism is, the philosophers laugh and they say, well, that's when you think you're the only being in the universe. Yes, exactly. Exactly so. Only with a real firm basis on inner experience and logic, that's how this super solipsism arises. I think I'm going to write that down. Note, super solipsism. I forget how to spell it. Maybe, yeah, there it is. Okay. Words will come up and they may be useful. Well, in a one way you're all alone, and in another way you are everything else and every being. And we got to get beyond the point where these are just words. Words are great. We can talk about the levels of the cosmic astral plane and the fact that the causal body of our solar logos is on the first subplane of the cosmic mental plane, whereas the causal body of Earth is only on the third subplane of that same cosmic mental plane. Okay, we know something about arrangement in a very vague way, but what do we know about the experience? So this has to be experienced, and we're going to get there. Maybe I'll do one more here. When you detect a certain otherness, through infuception you detect it, right? Which not only unites, but is all things. In other words, you're looking at something, you're looking at a person. I practice with certain people, I see their form. Then suddenly, I see something else. I call it otherness sometimes. And then I find out, hey, it's not only otherness, it's I. I am that otherness. When you detect the otherness, which not only unites, but is all things and people, that otherness is you as, okay, you can have this is my different chains of yous. You can have a YOU inside a universe, but you got to get rid of the universe to have a capital Y, capital O, capital U. And the final U, you can't even write it. It's the absoluteness, the blank, the no thing. And in other words, you are the essential otherness which samifies or samifies all perceptions. There's this otherness, it pops in, and it makes everything the same. A lot of people are worried about same. They say, oh gosh, it's really dull, everything's same. And one of my really brilliant friends gets worried about the word immutability, because he says, well, everybody tries to avoid that. It's static, it's, what does he say here? I think he says it somewhere else. Let's see if I can find it. It's in one of these letters. Unchanging through time, unalterable. That's okay. But on the physical plane, we understand everything is changing over time. But I believe people also think naturally in material terms. Now, that's his hypothesis, that people are naturally thinking in material terms, and it is true to a certain extent. We want to stop doing that. Yes, we want to think practically in material terms when we have to. And otherwise, we also want to think in non-material terms. So they think of the material opposite of mutable as, and this is his kind of negative meanings, pejorative meanings of what immutability means to most people: rigid, frozen, static, lifeless. Now, who would want that? But the kind of immutability we're looking at is the immutability of essence, not the immutability of things. In the universe, things are always re-relating, changing, changing position, coming closer to the grand design. Everything's in motion there. Only the essence is immutable, not the form. In the case of absolute infinity, it's a difficult situation. And when you really start thinking about absolute infinity, it is every time you think you might just know a little something, some new necessity about it pops up, and just like and you realize you know nothing at all. Look, Galileo was set up. I told you about this. He set up a circle with all lines, radii infinitely close, in his imagination. But then he drew a concentric circle, and then he noticed that there were spaces between the radii in the larger circle. So right away he realized he could keep on drawing these concentric circles, and absolute infinity would be appearing but never achieved. And he said, as a result of that, God is incomprehensible. Well, he didn't mean the old man with the gray beard. It was a much more sophisticated idea of what God was. Just like Buckminster Fuller had a fantastic definition of God. I've got to refine it. It's just amazing, coming from that kind of genius. But anyway, Galileo gave up. He said, God is incomprehensible. And certainly to us little human beings, I agree, it is. But we get closer and closer and closer, and until we realize in some crazy way that we are the very thing we're looking for. The seeker and the sought are one. You can find that from the Tibetan, and I'm going to kind of show you where that is, because I think it's such a beautiful idea. And he says, the seeker and the sought are one. Okay, it's the sixth Ray Mantram. Okay, wait a second. I'm not having such luck. I'm going to do this differently. I still persist. I still why am I not having luck here? What's the matter with me here? Let's try another one. Sorry. I'll find it. Oh, it is but me. 3 of them. There we go. Look down here, number Ray 6. Because I got it slightly wrong. I am the seeker and the sought. I rest. It's marvelous. Let all desire cease. Let aspiration end. The search is over. Let the soul realize that it has reached its goal, reached the goal, And from that gateway to eternal life and cosmic peace, let the word sound, I am the seeker and the sought. I rest. Every one of these mantras at the end is fantastic according to a very high ray within your nature. And when it comes to the second ray, naught is but me. When it comes to the first ray, not only I will persist, but I still persist. It shows that it is accomplished. Somehow DK put it down in two ways, or at least the editor did. All right, friends. So, I don't know. What I'd like to do is just offer you the opportunity to say something, ask something, make a statement, whatever. You can do that in written form, or you can do that. Let's see, I'm going to say we come to end of Series 3 and Program 6. And this is the 18th. By this time, it's getting pretty late here. So it's the 17th, 18th of September. And, I'll try to do this again next Tuesday night. I know it's not convenient for everybody. And like I say, if you have to work for a living, as some people do, really, it may not be convenient at all. But some of us are retired, and maybe we can come to it in that way. So, anything you want to say? Anything you want to question? Or is it all just too much? And sometimes I simply look, we're looking for who we are. Know thyself is the Delphic oracle, and if you know yourself, you will know the world, the universe, you'll know reality. Because basically what we're saying is we're not only this form that we see and feel and express through. We are that out of which the form came. And in one of my letters, I went down the alphabet and started with out of me. Now, the me, of course, is not your personal me. It's reality. It's being. Out of me as being, as, I'm just going to say here, being and isness. So out of me, all, and then I go down the alphabetical list. Out of, and if you really meditate on this, of course, it's just mind-blowing because it's so different from how you think about yourself. Now, of course, your little self has to be treated right and has to treat every other little self right and every other part and piece until right relations between all things are achieved in the lower worlds. Can't get away from that. Even though you know that somehow the you that is isness is the root of all of it. So I would recommend, I think you have this, and it's in the chat, in the handouts. It's called what letter is it? Letter to IAB on the 4th of September. I would suggest you get it. And if you don't want to run down the whole thing all at once, then just, take one at a time or two at a time and just see if you can get the feeling, the experience, the experience of being the source of things. Now I know, I am not unaware that this is the planet of suffering, of a painful endeavor, of purifying pain and releasing sorrow. I'm not unaware of that. And I know that to be a human being on this planetary hospital can be really horrible, relatively, at times. But I'm making the assumption that if we know what we really are and get the slightest inkling of that all-pervading isness, which is completely formless, not just, like you say, oh, well, you go into the Buddhic plane, it's formless. No, not like that. That's a subtle form. I mean completely formless. Essence is completely formless. Utter essence. That if we know something about our utter essence, and as well as all the other practical things of esotericism, somehow our life on this planet will be enriched and we'll be able to give more of value to others. In some ways, it's very Neptune. Christ was Neptune. It's called Neptune. And he could identify with everybody. He just approached them and he saw. Rings passed not made no difference to him because he was always already inside and beyond the ring passed not that blocks us and say, well, I am I, you are you, now what's going on with you? All that. He was inside. And Neptune can do that. It was not Saturn, except that by fulfilling the law, he had come to that state. And was it Uranus? Well, in a way, Uranus represents the one absolute identity. So it was the higher synthesizing planets that he was operating under. And one day we'll be able to do that too, but we have to struggle forward out of diversity into oneness. Struggle forward out of a kind of impositional diversity. You don't have a choice. I mean, it's just imposed on your manas. Everything is perceived as parts and pieces. But we struggle out of diversity, which is the forest of error, and we come into this oneness. And then, one day, when the universe is no more, forever, cyclically, we'll understand what absolute zeroness is. It's really the no thing, but those are just words. And but you have to get rid of every universe in order to be in an intense enough situation in the supra-universal world above the universe, beyond it, to get any idea, any registration, because then now you're going to be the absolute deity of what it means to have to be zeroness, absolute zeroness, which, as I say to everybody, it doesn't mean you're nothing. You are absoluteness, and the no thing is another way of talking about zeroness. Well, those are just speculations, but sometimes people cannot breathe if they do not have some degree of this wisdom. I told you the old story about the guru who was sitting by the water, and along comes a boy and says, Guruji, I want to be your student. So, what does the guru do? Engage in conversation? Say, sure. Well, no. He grabs the boy by the hair and plunges his head underwater. And he's holding it there. And he's holding it there. And the boy is struggling. But, of course, the guru didn't want to drown him, so he lifts him up. And the boy is gasping, 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 hardly breathe, gasping. And the Guru said, okay, when you were underwater, what was your main thought, your main desire? What was going on in you? And the boy said, I needed air, Master. I wanted air. I wanted to breathe. So the Guru says, when you want the wisdom as much as you wanted air underwater, come back and see me. I tell you, it just impressed me about the intensity of desire which is required to really make a breakthrough into what we really are. If we just dilly-dally and a little of this and a little of that, and, as DK says, we feebly meander down the road doing what we like, do the feeble meander, we don't get anywhere. But when we dig the deep well, or really have such an ardent desire for truth and reality and our true identity, maybe we'll get somewhere, and the Guru will appear. Of course, it'll be inside ourselves, but in another sense, a classical teacher may appear as well. Okay, anything, friends, that you would like to bring up about, like anything? Anything. I always say the wisdom is wide open. You can start anywhere and get anywhere else if you wish. And I hope, sometimes I forget to turn off my mute, or I'm on mute. So then you've been watching a silent movie all this time. But anyway, but I know the voice of God would have prevented me from going on in that manner. And I here refer to Joe and Michael as the voice of God, like nobody can hear you. Okay. Is there anything you would like to say? Because I'm not going to go on forever here. I'm just going to try to carry on. Next time, next Tuesday night. And, but friends, think about these things. They may be beyond the fence, beyond the pale. They may even be beyond the universe in a certain way. But as we rise towards the sea of fire, they're going to be realities to us. Ah, I hear a breath. Yes.
I just wanted to say, since no one stepped in, that when I look at that list, the first thought is in, out of me, out of me comes in play with every single one on that list. That thought is constant when I see that list.
You know what? There's I wrote about it somewhere, but there's a influx point and an efflux point. So there is a flowing into manifestation through the influx point. And but who's to say what's influx and efflux? And then a flowing out of whatever is illusory and divided through a absolute efflux point. And then absoluteness is all. So out of me is correct, but the idea of entering is also correct. The in part is also correct. I just thought I would keep going with the whole idea, like who's responsible for everything you see? Who really is responsible? And although we can hardly fathom it at the beginning of this particular universal cycle, we are responsible. And all these things and people and everything else are what we, the I, have become. See, it's not so much that the universe is a creation as it is, in my view, a self-becoming. A self-becoming. Well, you'll notice that the language I'm using is a little different from Master DK's language. It's, as I say before, when we get into cosmic fire and all the rest, we'll use Master DK's language. But this is an attempt to climb the mountain of vision. He says to all of us, he says, hey, how much of the mountain of vision have you climbed by yourself? Meaning, you can keep on repeating what the teacher said, and that's good as long as you understand it and so forth. But are you really climbing the mountain of vision and on your own power, and do you care? And are you always trying to see and be more, So I'll just say I hope that we have that kind of intensity of purpose where we're always trying to get to the bottom of what ourselves are, and I think it'll be found in one way as an entry point at the bottom of our heart. He says, I love you from the bottom of my heart. What does that really mean? Why the bottom of my heart? Why? So maybe experientially we can prove that to ourselves.
That was just Tia asked to have the handouts sent, and I would be happy if anyone else is having difficulty, just put it in the question box and I'll be happy to send those out via email attachment. And Michael, the other thing I was going to mention, I know last time that you mentioned maybe trying a poll. So I put one in, not that it has any great meaning, but just to experiment with this group. So in the future, if you wanted to do a poll on some point, under the polls, you select a poll, and it's Let's Try a Poll is the name of it, and see if this group is interested in using that. We could try it out if you want.
Yeah. Okay. Well, let's look at that. I never have offered a poll to anyone, and it wasn't I that said so. I have a distaste for polls. However, when I get in my more democratic moods, I do see that there's a great need for it. So
well, I'm going to have to go back through all the recordings and call you on that, because I know you did fall into that democratic mood at one point in time.
It's going to be a trap. It's going to be a trap for me. So do find it if you can, because I want to be caught up short as suggesting a poll, which I've never done in my life. Okay. But I know you're a truthful person, so you probably heard it, and I'm just suffering from what all old people suffer from. So you let me know, okay?
It was a weak moment, I'm sure.
Okay, you let me know. Okay, friends, so now I'll tell you what, let's come back into the universe. And what we're going to do, I realize that some of this languaging may seem new. And basically, in some of the letters I'm writing you, I'm really trying to keep it simple, because I know in simplicity there lies understanding. But the unusualness, like for instance, when I say to you, I give you a suggestion. I say, fill space completely. What? Okay, well, you have to use your imagination and your heart and your sensitivity to do that. So it takes some practice. So even though sometimes I'm just using simple words, the kind of act behind them is not customary, and it will take us some time to deal with those matters. But it's not the same as complex language. More, the complex language is found a bit more in this place, and there the the language, I pull out all the stops and use different things. But if you're sure of the fundamentals, like I am identical with all things and beings, then some of these complexities will make more sense. And what I hope I've been able to do, and I'm not sure that I have, is to convince you a little bit that not only are the mental relations between things to be studied assiduously, really, really pondered, but the realm of no relations at all, because of no division at all, has equally to be approached in whatever way we can do it. Now, some of my friends who've been in this business a long time say, well, hey, Michael, you're offering something that nobody's really interested in because they can't follow it, blah, blah, blah. But I have more confidence that at the very center of your being, of my being, of anyone's being, is this memory of what we really are, and this feeling sense of not this, not that, not this, not that, neti, 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 the old Vedantan thing where you don't want your identity trapped in a form. Your identity is something much, much bigger than that, and finally, if it can mean anything at all, absolutely infinite. Your identity. And people say, well, you're just crazy. How can you talk about that? But I can, and find that I must. And maybe there's something in it for you too. I hope so. And I will persist with this kind of offering on the days that my stamina holds and I'm not somewhere in transit. Okay, so I'm not going to go on forever here, but yes, of course I'm going on forever, and so are you, and always have been. The interesting thing is, whatever universe you choose, whether it's 5 universes ago or gazillion universes ago, it's always been infinitely preceded. And that's wild thought, because everybody says, hey, something has to start, doesn't it? Doesn't there have to be a beginning? Well, the very presumption here is in the realm of reality, there's no beginning and no end. It's almost easier to think of something that has no end than something that has no beginning. But that's what we're talking about. And if we can bend our mind into a condition of acceptance of some of these far-out possibilities, I do believe our spiritual life will be enriched, and all the good things in the world of relativity will also come to us. The old saying, seek ye first the kingdom of heaven, and all things will be added unto you. And I say, in the same mode, seek ye first the kingdom of being, and all relativities will be added unto you. Okay, tomorrow night, into Cosmic Fire, same time, same station, but a different link. And Joe,
And it's in the chat box.
is it in the
In the chat box, yes.
in the chat box? And don't be deceived. I made the mistake of putting something in the chat box too. So this is the one you put in, right, Joe? This one.
Yes, because it has the date, day, time, link, and the webinar ID.
Yeah, okay. That ends in 299. Very good. Okay, very good. And if you wonder, is there a reason why we're starting at 8:01 instead of 8 o'clock? Yes, there is a reason. We'll maybe take a look at the astrological chart and see how that looks. Okay, friends, persist. How can you help it? You've been doing it forever. And, I guess the next thing is to be happy about it. It is said that Wagner, was it Wagner? He was a friend of Nietzsche and other friends of Nietzsche, the German philosopher, came to his house and saw him sitting by the piano in utter despair. Why? Because he had just conceived of the idea of eternal repeatability. In other words, that some kind of cycle would occur over and over again, exactly as it had occurred the time before and the time before. Well, we know that with infinite variation, that's not possible. And while there may be a cycle of recurrence of a universe, it'll always be different because absolute infinity is inexhaustible. So I don't know if Nietzsche ever came to that, but he certainly was unhappy about the prospect of ever-recurrent sameness. But because we've got so much inexhaustibility in absolute infinity, nothing is ever the same except the absolute infinity itself and absoluteness. Everything else, every universe is different and everything within it is different. So a hand came up. Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Tia. Thank you, everybody. And the meditation, did I send the meditation to you, Joe, to be put in the box?
It is. Yep, it's already in the handouts, and those who couldn't get it, I have sent it to them in an email form.
So Tia needs that, and maybe
It's already sent, and it's already sent to Lorraine.
Yeah, okay, fantastic. Okay, friends, we'll enjoy our new identity even while retaining necessarily our old identity. Humility counts for a lot in this realm of the relative. And we'll just go ahead and see where it leads us. We don't know, because nobody knows until you try and venture in and go beyond the pale, even while staying within the pale. It's a lot like the monad. The monad stayed at home even while it ventured forth on the complete pilgrimage of 5 cosmic subplanes. So can you have a both-and situation? Can you have an apparent contradiction? And I say, yeah, all the time you can. So right now, as the monad, we're at home, and as the extension of the monad, the brother that went forth and the brother that stayed at home, we are the monad too. Only we're out here waking up to the fact that a lot of people in the Father's house were eating better than we did, as we're just eating the husks of life, and we have to return to that great spiritual nourishment on the monadic plane. Okay, great invocation. Here we go. Which is, of course, an in-universe word of power. From the point of light within the mind of God, let light stream forth into the minds of men. Let light descend on earth. From the point of love within the heart of God, let love stream forth into the hearts of men. May Christ return to earth. From the center where the will of God is known, let purpose guide the little wills of men, the purpose which the masters know and serve. From the center which we call the race of men, let the plan of love and light work out, and may it seal the door where evil dwells. Let light and love and power restore the plan on earth. Thank you, friends. Lots of love, many blessings to you. And let's see what we can do to Cosmic Fire tomorrow night. At least it begins with certain profound stanzas, and it's liable to go on beyond the year 2025 if we keep going with it. And maybe someone takes it over, we'll see. But we should have at least 5 years into it, I think. Okay, so maybe I'll see you tomorrow night. Same time, and all the best to you. See you soon.